Hey guys, it's Robin, RsIslandCrafts, and welcome to my studio. Today I'm going to show you how I made my pinched bottom zipper pouch. I saw a few ladies making these pouches several months ago over on Instagram, and the detail that I loved about it is on the bottom of the pouch it has these little tucked in spots instead of what we're used to seeing when we do our boxed corners. Now, Crafty Gemini recently put out a video called the folded pouch, and with hers she did it as an unlined pouch using some leather. Couple things, I don't have leather and I love a lined pouch. I just love how clean it is. I love that extra bit of fabric inside that I can look at, and again, I don't have the leather. So I thought it can't be too hard to figure out the lining. If I know how to do the outside, then I should be able to just reverse it and do the same thing on the lining. So today I'm going to show you how to do that. Now on this channel, we've sewn several zipper pouches. We've done live streams. We did different variations. So I'm not going to take you through each individual step today. So if you're new to zippers, you should go ahead and check out some of my other videos. I believe I have a playlist for zippers. I will put a link down below in the description box so it's easy for you to find. Now zipper pouches come in all shapes and sizes. Sometimes I make them based on the size of my zipper. Sometimes I make them based on the size of whatever I'm going to put in it. This is like a universal size. I really enjoy this one. So I'm going to give you all the measurements for this size pouch, but you guys can make it in any size you'd like. Now I have a zipper and it's extremely long compared to the size of my pouch. I find it much easier to sew the zipper in if it is longer than the pouch. But if you want to do the version where you put the little tabs on and everything like that, you can do that. But as you see, I'm not putting any of the tabs, so that's easy. You can change that up however you want. I have two pieces of my outer fabric. And these are going to measure 10.5 inches wide and 8 inches tall. Again, whatever measurements work for you, whatever size pouch you want. I also have two pieces of lining fabric that measure the same, 10.5 inches wide, 8 inches tall. And for this pouch, I'm going to go ahead and use some medium weight fusible interfacing. I picked up the Pelon 931 TD fusible midweight from Joann's. It gives my pouch a little bit of structure, but it's still something that if you need to, you can fold it up and store it or put it in a suitcase or a backpack or another tote bag or something like that. As you can see, after it's folded, it just bounces right back into its shape. Giving all of my fabrics a good press. I'm going to do my pressing today on my wool pressing mat, and I have a thick kitchen towel that I doubled over. That's just going to protect my table from any heat or steam. I'm going to make sure my outer fabrics are nice and pressed, because if you have a crease in it now, once we put that interfacing on, that crease is going to be almost permanent. And then one piece at a time, I'm going to put my fabric right size down. Now my interfacing is a little crinkled and wrinkled, but it's going to work its way out afterwards. Sometimes I cut my interfacing just slightly smaller than my fabric. I did it this time because of the width of the interfacing. I was able to cut two pieces if I didn't care if it was exactly the same size. Now this is going to go into my seam allowance, so I'm not going to be worried about it. When you're working with interfacing, you have to press it. You don't iron it like this. So follow the directions on your interfacing and how long it tells you to press it and what temperatures, whether you have steam or not. I like to just get it set on the back, and then I prefer to go from this side because now I can slide my iron over and make sure I'm getting that heat everywhere. You can use a heavier weight interfacing, or you can use a more lightweight. You can go ahead and quilt your pouch if you prefer. When we get to the bottom and we start doing our pinched bottom, it's going to be a little harder to pinch it and stitch through it if you're using something like a denim. I just want to make sure that is adhered, and I'm going to do the same process with the next one. Making sure that, I don't know if you can see in the video, but you see all those little white dots? I can feel the roughness. This side feels smoother. This is where all the glue is, so all of those little white dots that you're seeing are the glue dots. So you want to make sure that is going down. If you're concerned at all that you might have it the wrong way, you can put a pressing cloth down and that way it won't stick to your iron. It'll stick to the pressing cloth if you have it wrong. Sometimes I might just go ahead and do a little bit of test down here to make sure, and then if it sticks, then I know I've got the proper side down, and then I can just go ahead like this. In the past, I have used a piece of fabric as my pressing sheet, and it ended up having a lot of interfacing and stabilizer pressed to it, so you can use one of those non-stick ones that you use for like applique. And that way, if it sticks, you can just go ahead and peel it off. Let it cool for a minute before you use it. Go ahead and use this one here. I want my zipper to open from the left to the right, so I'm going to put the head of my zipper down this way, right side's facing. I like to put some clips in now before I put my next piece of fabric on. The next part of my sandwich is going to be my liner, and I need to make sure that I put them right sides together. I'm going to line it up over here on the edge. And over on this edge, because we cut them both the same size, so everything should line up nicely. And then I can add some more clips or pins if you prefer. Take it over to my sewing machine and sew it with the zipper foot. I also went ahead and top stitched it down so you can see it on both sides. And now to do the next section, I want to make sure, since I have a directional fabric, that I've got it going in the right direction. So I'm going to lay this down, right sides facing, from my outer fabric to my outer fabric. Pop my pins in again. Put on my clips again. Flip it over to the lining side. So I can put right sides together on my lining. Again, lining everything up. So far we're doing everything like we would in a regular zipper pouch, nothing different. I'm gonna go sew this. There are both sides done and top stitch. Now as you can see, my zipper is super long. I think I started out with an 18-inch zipper, and this pouch is only 10.5 inches wide. I probably would normally use about a 14-inch zipper. So at this point, we're going to take our outer fabrics, put them together, and our lining fabrics, put them together. I want to take my zipper and I want to open it up at least halfway. That's like the biggest thing with the zipper pouches, to make sure when you get to this point that you open your zipper, so that we have a way to turn everything around and get back into our pouch later. Also, if your zipper is on this side here, then you're going to end up in that problem, because you're going to sew across here and your zipper tab is going to pull off. I'm going to just put a couple clips in just so that I have my pouch in the orientation that I like it in, so that when I get ready to sew, I have everything all set up. I line up these little two pieces right there at the top of the pouch. I also like to put clips on the other side. I just like to know that that zipper is staying in one spot. The pouch isn't going to be flopping all over. I give it a nice little tug so that everything's nice and firm and tight. Now, normally when we sew our pouches, we leave an opening in the bottom of our lining. We go ahead and stitch all the way around, and then we turn it right side out through that opening. Because of what we're doing with the bottoms, because we need to pinch them, basically pleating them, we need to sew across both of these. So at this point, we're going to do a stitch line. We're going to go 3/8 of an inch seam allowance across here and across our lining fabric. We're not going to touch the sides at all yet. We're just going to go ahead and leave them. If you want, you can line everything up and pin it there and there. But remember, we're just going to stitch the bottom of both parts of our bag. Now, if you want, you can take this over and press it so that you have your seams open. For that, I just roll this a little bit. Make sure I'm not putting any creases in the fabric underneath. And then I can open this up. Give it a little finger press first. and come through and press it with my iron. I'm going to do the same thing on this side. Some people will fold this and press it and then flip it over and fold it and press it. I haven't had much luck with that. Plus, that's 2 steps. Now here I want to be careful. I don't want to put creases into my outer fabric. So I might just go ahead and give it a little bit of a finger press and not hit it with an iron. If you have the smaller palm iron, you can go ahead and do that. But this works too. Now this is where we need to make some decisions. We need to decide how wide we want the bottom of our bag. Now on this one, I did it at a 1-inch mark. So if you have a 1-inch here and a 1-inch here, that gives us a 2-inch bottom. So if you wanted your bottom to be 3 inches, you'd want to make your mark at 1.5 inches, so that we had 1.5 inches and 1.5 inches to be 3. So then we set it down. I have a 2-inch bottom on it. I think this is pretty good. I think for a zipper pouch that has a nice amount of a bottom to it, gives you a nice amount of space. But since I've already done the 1 inch, I think today we're going to do a 1 1/4. Just to see what our bottom looks like that way. Then will you give us a 2.5 inch bottom, and we'll know if that, even sometimes that little bit of a 1/2 inch, will make it just to be the size we want. So whatever we do to our outer fabric, we're going to do to our lining. Whatever we do to our lining, we're going to do to our outer fabric, because they're going to work together as a cohesive unit, and we're going to have our pouch. So I'm going to do mine 1 1/4. So from my stitching line, I'm going to put a little mark in the seam allowance. Since I'm doing a 3/8 inch seam allowance, I can just put a little mark. I've got a Friction pen. It's going to disappear with heat. It's also on the inside of the bag. So I think as long as you're not using a marker that's a really wet marker, like a Sharpie or some type of kid's marker or something that might bleed into your fabric, you can use any of the marking tools that we do in quilting and such. I'm going to take 1 1/4 inch. I'm going to make a little mark. Just enough so that I can see it. And the same thing on this side. Go up 1 1/4 inch, because whatever we do on one side, we need to make sure we do on the other. I do like to make the mark on the opposite side also, just to make sure that wherever I am at, I will be able to see these registration marks. I'm going to do the same thing on my lining. 1 1/4 inch. And on this side, you could put pins in if you prefer to not mark on your fabric. Just remember, if you're using a heat erase pen or other marking utensil, that if you hit this with an iron, that mark's going to go away. So we'll start with our lining because it doesn't have any interfacing on it. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to fold this in, and I want this mark and this mark to match up. See, there's another good reason to have our marks like that. I'm just pushing down so that my seam allowance will sit nicely in there. You could make a fold from this part to this part and give it a good press with the iron. We're going to be sewing on the sides of the bag, so I really don't worry about the bottom until after I've sewn it. I'm just lining up all the raw edges to make sure everybody is nice and even. Pop a clip in it and come over to this side. Match my lines up. Then I'm going to go ahead and put a couple clips in just to hold it. It's not necessary, but I just don't want that bottom to be flopping around on me. Then I'm going to do the same thing on this side. Match my 2 marks up. See how right here that where that just tucked it in, it's not lined up, so I want to pull that over. because whatever we're doing here is what's going to give us our marks in this section right here. So we want to make sure that we have everything lined up nicely. We want the left side of the pouch to match the right side of the pouch. We want the outer to match the lining so that everyone stays nice and even. A little bit harder to work with because we have the medium weight interfacing on it. I'll just pinch it at those marks. See how we just pretty much put a pleat in it? So right, what you're looking at right there is basically if you were to pleat something, that's what it looked like. Just take the time to fiddle with it as much as you need to just to get that right. I'm going to center my seam down there so I know where I'm at up here. I'll go ahead and put a couple clips in. I was lining it up with one of the lines from the inside of the bag and not from my actual mark, because when I did it, I could see that I had this extra bit of fabric here. If you have this, you've done something wrong. So find your mark. There we go, and line that up. No wonder why I had such a hard time getting that side all lined up nice and neat. See how it lays nice and flat there? Everything lays nice and flat on this side. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take it to the sewing machine, but I need to leave a space so that I can turn it right sides out. So pick whichever side you want on your lining. I'm going to throw an extra clip in here to remind me. You could put a couple pins in, and you want to leave a space that's 2 inches maybe, depending on the size of your pouch. If you have a larger pouch, you can leave a larger opening. But for me on this pouch, if I leave about 2 inches, that gives me enough room that I've sewn down here and I've sewn up there, and I should be able to turn my pouch through that little spot right there. So now, 3/8 inch seam allowance, 2.0 stitch length. I'm going to stitch down completely on this side. I'm going to back stitch at the start and the stop of it, and on this side, I'm going to start stitching. I'll back stitch where I decide to put the opening, come back here, back stitch, and when I get to the end, I'll back stitch there also. Remember, your zipper tab has got to be on the inside, so you should have this flat piece flopping over here, and then you just have your regular zipper there. Go a little slow over the zippers, double stitch if you'd like. So there's my little opening in the lining. I stitched over everywhere, but on both sides. I'm gonna trim off my zipper. On this side, see if we had our zipper tab on the outside of our pouch, we would be cutting it off right now, and they're not fun to put back together. They do have the continuous zipper tape where you just add your own zipper pull, and they seem to go on really easy, but for some reason I always struggle with these, and I don't know if it's any different or if it's just me, but yeah. I'm just going to trim this down just a little bit. I'm going to trim my corner just like I would in any other project. I'm just going to leave a few stitches, 1/8 of an inch or so right there. I don't want to cut too close to my stitching line. There's a lot of bulk down there in that corner. Same thing with my lining. Both corners. I'm going to give it a nice good steamy press. I'm going to set that little pleat that we put at the bottom, that little pinch. Go ahead and give my lining an ironing just for fun in case I got all wrinkled up while I was sewing. Now on my bottom, I want to make sure that I have everything lined up neatly. I want to put that seam right down in the valley. See how I can see the fabric from the outer pouch there? So I'm just going to make sure that it's centered so that all of these pieces are nice and even. Give my pouch a nice little press just in case. We're going to make it pretty wrinkled in a second anyway. Find the hole in your lining and go down into your zipper bag. Go all the way down to my outer fabric and just start pulling that through. I did make my hole a little bit small. I was sewing away like a crazy woman and just forgot. Putting a couple pins in there at the start and stop, or marking it with your pen would be helpful. I back stitched on each side of the opening, so if I did have to go and do some pulling and tugging on it, it wouldn't rip the seam. Once you get your outer bag out, that's the stiffest with the quilting or the interfacing, depending on what you're using. There we go. Take my crochet hook or whatever you have that's not too pointy. Just bring out our bottoms. Want to go ahead and just find our corners. Push the bottom out a little bit. Before we start messing with that too much, I want to bring my zipper. There we go. Okay, so with the bottom, a little easier if your hole was a little bit larger, but I can put a finger in there. Just want to poke my corners out so that I'm about even. You can get out a tape measure. You can measure them. Do the same for the other side. You can kind of feel what feels like a corner in there. So you're going to have, this is what it's going to look like when we're done. Now we're going to close up the side of our lining just like we do any other pouch. It's just not on the bottom, it's on the side. You can do it by hand, whip stitch, ladder stitch. I take it over to the machine. Since it's in the side of the pouch, it's not as noticeable as if it were in the bottom. So here's mine on this one, but when you put it in like this, it just tucks right in and it just looks like the seam. Yes, it looks a little different than this side, but I think it's okay. If that bothers you, just go ahead and hand sew it. There we go, all stitched up. Tuck it all in. Now on the inside, let's see if we can see it. Our little tucks and pleats and stuff are going to be on the inside, visible this way, and on the outside we're going to see it there. There's your little pouch. You can give it a nice little steam, help with any of the wrinkles. Now our bottom is measuring 2.5 inches like we wanted. So we can give it a little fold. Gonna fold right along those sides there. Give it a nice press if you want. When I sell these in my Etsy shop, they have to be folded like this for easy shipping. So I go ahead and give them that nice press. So they're looking all good. Then when you get them at home, you can just pop out the bottom. And there we go. The only thing left to do is to put a fun little tassel on. For those of you who've been here for a while, you may remember seeing this. I picked this up at Michael's. It's meant to store photos in, but it's really great to store a variety of things in it. Embroidery floss, jewelry making supplies. I keep my tassels in here. I think this cream one might be nice. Beige. The same color. Or I could highlight the blue if I want to pull the blue. Oh, I like the blue on it. So I want to pull the blue out of the little Vespa scooter there and out of the clouds in the sky. Or I could choose a pink one if I want to pull the pink out of the different places, or yellow. But I really like the blue, so I'm going to pick the blue one. I picked these tassels up on Amazon. There's a variety of places you can get them on there. You can buy them in bulk. And then I also store in here my jump rings. A lot of times when you buy the tassels, you'll get the jump rings that'll come with it. You can also pick up a package of them. I have these are silver. I have no clue what came with the ones that I purchased. It just came with jump rings. It might say on it. A lot of times if you look on the listing, it'll tell you what size. But you can also just take them up to Michael's or Joann's and buy a small package. I love storage containers. This is an old pencil case that I purchased for Robbie. I purchased extra ones, and this is probably from, Robbie is 22 this year, I believe, and I purchased these way back when, maybe when he was in first grade, kindergarten. But I have pliers for making jewelry. I have these just regular ones, a basic plier with the little teeth marks on it. So I just grabbed, this jump ring is already open, otherwise you have to open them. When you open a jump ring, you don't pull it out this way, you pull it this way. So I'll put my little tassel just right through the little top, and I just go right through the zipper. And usually they are really simple that you can just go ahead and put my finger behind it, and then I just push this so that it goes. And if you go a little bit past the opening and then back again, you'll have a nice closure there, and you won't have to try to crimp it this way. If it's too hard and you got a thicker jump ring, you can always use 2 pliers to do it. So there we go, our fun little pleated bottom, pinched bottom pouch. Put a nice little blue tassel on it. It's fully lined. We have everything that looks all nice and neat in there. In the bottom, the lining might sit just a little bit looser than we normally would have, but I think it's perfectly acceptable. And then our bottom and our fun sides. Right now, everything's folded. As you get using it, this will pop out a little bit. They said I had to give it a nice press to put it away. You just put your hand down there and give it a little poke. Now we have our fun corners. So I hope you enjoyed making these pouches. If you have any questions, please leave them down below in the comments. Your code word for today will be blue. So thanks for hanging out with me, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye.